Argo is a game reminiscent of the movie Alien or Aliens, and is a neat sci-fi puzzle type game. I'm going to give you an idea of how it plays here today on Legendary Tactics. So for those of you not familiar with Argo, this is a puzzly sci-fi type game where we are on this space station here, and we have to escape the alien hordes that are arriving, and we got to get onto some escape pods and get out of Dodge. So, but there's kind of an interesting mechanic where you're kind of bumping units along a chain, a causal chain, so to speak. And so it's an interesting game. I'm just going to give a little bit of a walkthrough. I think you'll be able to basically learn how to play more or less just by watching. But it's not. This is not an explicit how to play video or anything like that. So my opponent was up first, and the first move of the game placed a corridor here, and an alien arrived in that corridor. That was essentially the first move there. Essentially, the game moves pretty quickly. You move the alien, you place a room, and then you move your astronauts. So my opponent chooses to move the robot. And actually, I should introduce the cast here before I forget. So the Chief has no special powers, but there is worth 2 victory points instead of 1 if your opponent kills them. The Explorer moves 2 spaces in one go. The Grunt kills aliens they move into, or if the alien moves on to their space, as long as there's 2 Grunts in that space, kills the alien. The Pilot will be able to move the escape pods when those get placed, and pick up friendly astronauts, probably from the space station on their escape. That's how you score the majority of your points. And then the robots are essentially immune to the aliens. They can move around with impunity, and you're going to see that in play in a second. So I did my move to move the alien and into the corridor, and the alien has to move if possible, so I didn't really have much of a choice. I just put him into the room with the robot of my opponent, but there's no effect, obviously, because the robots are unaffected. I'm going to try and keep the space station in reasonable focus for you. It's going to get harder as the space station gets built out, but anyway, it'll give you a good idea. So I placed the lab here, and the lab swaps an astronaut in the station with one opponent or one of your own and an alien. That's when it's activated. Now you need 2 meeples there to activate this particular tile, but it's potentially useful if you're really trying to muck up your opponent's moves. So anyway, so I placed the lab right here, and then I'm just going to just adjust this here a little bit for you. And anyway, then draw a fresh tile. I moved my Explorer 2 to go into the lab, and that was basically my only move because it was the first move of the game. So I think I only get 1 move. We only get 1 move at first, and then we get to move 2 astronauts per turn after that. My opponent moves the alien there, places another alien and a jump room where astronauts can use to jump around the spaceship as long as they can activate it. And that places an alien there, draws a fresh tile, moves the Grunt into the corridor. Now, if you'll notice, the room here, the corridor, only has room for 1 meeple, if you see the symbol there. And so that bumps the robot then, and this is where you're going to see all these chain reactions here. It bumps the robot into the room with the alien. That's no problem. Then the Explorer, who, if you recall, can move 2, moves into the corridor, bumps the Grunt into the corridor, which kills the alien, gives my opponent a point. And then, because there's only room for 1 meeple there, the existing astronaut has to move to the following corridor. So you can see there's kind of this is where the puzzle part comes in, not only in putting the space station together, but also in you know, figuring out who bumps who and how to bump your opponent into an alien and all that fun stuff. So, and then the explorer takes the second move and just goes back into the starting room. So I have to move an alien. I choose to do that there. I choose to place the core room. This is a room which is deadly to stay in. If you start your turn there, any astronauts that start their turn there die. So you can pass through, but I wouldn't want to stay there. Draw a fresh tile. I move my chief there and the grunt in there to kill an alien and to score a point and to hopefully make my life a little bit easier. Then my opponent places a corridor right there, which is a bit of a potential issue because the alien is turned up there. But my grunt's nearby, so I'm not too terrified. But here's where the bumping happens. So the explorer bumps my chief into that jump room right next to the alien, and then moves in there. Now the lab has room for 2, so that's okay. And then the grunt moves into the corridor with the robot. The robot bumps my grunt into the main room. So now my chief is kind of vulnerable, and especially because my turn being next, I have to move the alien, and there's only one spot for that alien to go. And so I have to eat my own chief, which gives my opponents a couple points. This track where the astronaut is placed, that's used to track the alien's victory points. So you have to not only beat your opponent, but make sure the alien doesn't score too many points either. And so you have to be a bit judicious with how many of your enemy you kill, because you may put yourself in a situation where you can't win, or it's very tough to win. So, or it could even end in an auto loss. So it's kind of a neat balancing trick there. So anyway, because I had no choice, I killed my own chief. I give add a control room here, which allows me to rearrange the station if I choose to. And I'm going to move my robot there. Not sure exactly what I could have done. Because I could bump the grunt and the robot of my opponent, but that wouldn't help because the robot's immune and the grunt would be in a spot potentially to kill the alien and give my opponent a point. So anyway, my opponent moves the explorer into the newly placed control room. I moved my explorer into the newly placed control room. The alien has to move, and really doesn't matter much, but this sets up a potential kill for the grunt. So my opponent does that and places a safe room. Now the safe room is just as it sounds. It's safe. You can fit 2 meeples in there, and aliens cannot move in there. So as long as you're there, you're safe from being eaten by aliens. So my opponent places the chief, moves the grunt over into the corridor, which kills the alien, and then the robot moves into the neighboring jump room. Then following that, we've got the pilot, which again causes a bit of a chain reaction there. So you can see how you can get some extra mileage out of movement that way as well if you play it wisely. I place a corridor, and basically I don't have a ton that I can kind of do here. I was trying to just basically get the explorer out of my territory, and which I did, and just bounced everyone around. I've kind of claimed that part. Now you may be wondering why we haven't put down any sort of escape pod yet, and that's simply because the escape pod has to be at a certain distance. I believe it's 3 tiles from the starting setup. I have to just double check that. But after a certain distance, then escape pods can be placed, and then you can start loading them with your astronauts to escape and score points. So that's why they haven't gone down yet. So anyway, my wily opponent, I'm just going to zoom out here and give you a bit better perspective, places another lab with an alien right next to me, which isn't pleasant, and then does a bunch of kind of bumping units around here, and actually activates the the jump room to move the robot, which bumps the my explorer, so the astronaut used the jump room to move to there, and that ended up moving my explorer into the alien. So now I've lost 2 of my astronauts, and it's harder to score if escaping on an escape pod if you don't have any astronauts to rescue. So I'm not doing particularly well this game. My move is to move the alien into the neighboring lab, but they're both robots there. So I'm going to place a jump room up top, and then kind of move my opponent, bumping them along a little bit, and just trying to cause a bit of confusion, I guess. I'm still learning the strategy to this game. I don't think it's a hard game. A lot of it is probably more reactive and tactical than anything else, but I didn't have any particular move that jumped out at me, so I thought I would do that. My opponent moves the alien there, possibly to cut off from an escape pod. That might be why. And anyway, we get an escape pod placed there, and the grunt moves along, and everything bumps along the chain here. And the robot is safely placed in the room with the alien, and kind of an interesting setup here. But anyway, the pilot activates the tile and swaps places with the alien because the jump room, the lab was activated. That switches the alien with any astronaut, either friendly or opposing. So that was a good use of that move, and basically with my opponent's chief in the safe room, and I've got 2 kind of vulnerable pieces there. It's kind of a bit of a pain. Also cleared the way to the escape pod for my opponent. So I obviously choose to move the alien further away, and I say, hey, I gotta get in on this escape pod action, so I'm going to place an escape pod there at the bottom, and that does risk, I've got the chief right there as well, so it does kind of risk accidentally taking my opponent, but I was thinking I can maybe get my pilot in there, so anyway, I'm going to activate my pilot there, get my pilot into the escape pod. So the jump room allows gives my by activating it, you can move one of your astronauts 2 spaces. So that's what I did and got on there. Now the pilot can move that escape pod around a different spot to pick up friendlies, but well, I don't know if that matters so much. I feel like I'm very far behind in this game already. But I do decide to fly over to that side, and basically just so the chief doesn't get in on that on my escape pod, and I'm going to use my robot there, try and get my robot safely away. And that's my move. The alien moves back towards my grunt. Potential victory point for me there, and my opponent places another escape pod, and then proceeds to do a bit of chain movement there, and activates the control room to move that piece closer there, and kind of broke up the spaceship. I'm not sure why that was done exactly. It seems to be put my opponent's chief in a more precarious situation, but I don't know. That was kind of a weird one, but anyway, I moved the alien, and then I'm gonna have to probably zoom out here just so you can get a better sense. There's another escape pod that has gone down. I'm looking to get my grunt away. My first move is the robot. We escape and go to a different spot, and I kill an alien for a point, and I'm hoping to get my astronauts away. I'm sorry about the microscopic nature of the of the space station at this point. The zoom feature doesn't really work very well for displaying the game after a certain point. Okay, so then after that, there's some more moving around. We get the pilot in the into the space. The pilot activates the escape pod to fly over and rescue the chief, which is the second move, and they escape. And then, yeah, there's still three units to evacuate there. The alien moves. I place a corridor. I move my grunt. There's nothing else really to do. The alien moves again. Another alien is placed more or less next door, but there's no attached zone, so my grunt is okay. The explorer bumps the robot into the escape pod and then escapes as well. And the grunt just moves back to the lab. One of the alien moves there. I place a room, and then I get onto the escape pod and wait. Essentially, not much we can do here. My opponent activates the lab to swap places, and essentially, basically to here. I'll just swing around. So I didn't have any astronauts to move. That ended the game. Sorry, it skipped forward there. And the final score was 18 for my opponent. Then the alien was at 13 because there was 2 of my astronauts that had been killed, and I ended up with 9 with only 2 astronauts who had left the station. And yeah, it wasn't the strongest game of mine. I have won games in the past, but this time I felt a little bit lost as to my best move. But anyway, it gives you a good idea of how the game works. I think it's it's neat for what it is, and I think it's a decent kind of puzzle type challenge. But it won't burn your brain too much playing it. But it's got some interesting twists and turns, and there are probably some interesting strategies if you play it out. So anyway, I hope this little playthrough was interesting and entertaining. If it was, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe down below, and we'll see you here next time on Legendary Tactics.